there, it's Jo from Minerva. I'm here today to do a sew along of an independent pattern called the Poppy and Cara from Atelier Jupe. It's quite tricky to see from that image the style of the dress, but from the back of the packet you will see there is a grown on sleeve dress with an elasticated waist and the same elasticated waist but with a strap across the shoulder. What's great about the shoulder on this pattern is it's really nice and wide, so you get full underwear coverage. The pattern is in European pattern sizes, so you'll need to make sure that you measure yourself. Don't worry about the number, it's just a number. Just measure yourself and use that as your cutting template. This pattern is suitable for beginners. It's really easy to construct. You've got straps, a facing that you put on, an elasticated waist and a straight hem. I'm going to make Poppy, which is the one with the slimmer straps, because there's a few things about attaching a facing that are a little bit different to normal. It comes in 2 hem lengths, so you can have a straight hem or you can have an asymmetric high-low hem. You can also change the pattern from the A-line skirt down to a maxi length if that's the style that you like to wear. I'm going to cut out over at the cutting table. I'm going to speed it along, but you will notice today that I am using a fabric with a directional print. Today I'm using a Minerva Exclusive Viscose fabric. This is called Bumble Garden for obvious reasons, but it's got a really strong print that you will need to take a little bit care of cutting, and you can also do a little bit of pattern matching if you want to. I'm a big fan of pattern balancing rather than full-on pattern matching, so I'll be making sure that I get this bee at my center here so that these diamond shapes are equally spaced along my front, and I'll also try and make sure along the elasticated waistband I get the illusion of some pattern matching, and even if I don't pattern match it exactly, I don't want any of these diagonal lines to jar. It's a beautiful fabric. It's really got a really soft hand. It's got a beautiful drape for the skirt and the grown on sleeves for this dress. It presses beautifully, so you'll get really nice crisp edges, and there's lots of colours to tone and match with this fabric. A definite summer choice. You'll notice when I'm cutting out that I bring the selvages together, so I will have the selvages together, not the raw edges that are cut from the cutter, and I need to make sure that my pattern pieces are in the same direction so that the bees stay the right way up, and you will see that I use the pattern to ensure that I get a good fold line. So when I find the grain of the fabric, I'm then going to make sure that bees remain on the fold of my fabric. thing to do is to overlock your edges or zigzag your edges so that you can work with your pieces without fraying. And you're going to add darts to the dart lines. I've used a carbon wheel and a carbon paper to mark them on, but however you mark your darts, and press those down. Second thing to do is to make the shoulder tabs. This is for the poppy version. So we're going to fold the long lengths together on both tabs. Sew the long edge, turn them out and press. With your shoulder tabs, you're going to place those on the front shoulder, leaving a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance and having the shoulder tab even. So make sure it's even and that you have your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance each side, and stitch in place. Going to add the back piece now and do the same on there. Add the tab with the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance on both sides so it's even, and sew in place. Next, pin the side seams so that the underarms and hems are even, and do that on both sides. Now it's time to work on facings. So this is the back facing and this is the front facing, and we're going to make an all-in-one facing that fits around the neckline of the top. So I've marked the seam allowances on using the pattern instructions. They are quite similar. So I'm going to put a B and an F back in the front. To make the facing unit, I'm going to attach the side seams. Sew the side seams and overlock the curved bottom edge. Bring back your bodice and fold the tabs to the inside. So the tabs are inside the top, shoulder seams are aligned, the top is inside out, the facing is right side out. Make sure you've got the front and the back ready to match, and you're going to put the facing right side to right side, so you're going to put that inside the top. And match up all of the front. You put the facing on in 2 stages. So you go from the side seam up to the top of the shoulder, then the neck, and then back to the side seam, and you sew that one first and then you turn over and repeat for the back. It's important that you make sure that the tabs are out of the way so that you don't catch them and sew through them. And you also want to line your stitching up with the edge of the shoulder tab. So you can mark those so that you're, even if you haven't quite got 1.5 seam allowance there, you can grade out to 1.5 seam allowance, and your shoulder tab will then fit exactly on the shoulder. And then you're going to do the same for the back, making sure that you don't touch the tabs on the inside and sew them to anything. When you've sewn the front, you then move to the back, and you have to do it in 2 pieces because you're restricted by the strap there. So now you have to sort of manipulate it to do the back half, because you can't do it all in one scoop, because those straps that you've suspended between the back and shoulder seam stop you having the facing completely on the inside. So you do the same for the back. And match up the raw edges. It's a good idea to put your pivot point so that you get a really crisp back. So I'm going to go 1.5 so that I know where to turn the pivot and get a crisp V shape. Okay, so it looks a lumpy bumpy mess, so we need to do some clipping so that we can get the fabric to fold in the right places. So where we put those little pivot marks here, we're going to do a cut and one on the back. And we can also clip around the curves because that will help the underarms to turn out. We can take some of the bulk out of the underarms as well if we want to. Depends which fabric we're using. This one's not bulky. Don't go through the seam, of course, but just clip on that stronger curve under the arm. It will help it to curve round so that you can press it more easily. I'm going to press that underarm, and the last bit of the facing after I've pressed it is to stitch in the ditch under the arm. So I'm going to match up the facing with the side seam, and then from the right side stitch in the ditch there so that it's not seen from the right side but it's catching the facing from the underside. I'm going to go and finish preparing this fabric. To complete the shoulder straps, fold down the seam allowance from the facing, and you can either choose to hand stitch across there, or you can do a top stitch from the right side. So you'll have a little bit poking out like this, and all of that strap goes inside, and you turn the seam allowance and pin it in place. Just need to get all of those ends in, and this end in here. You can see now why you needed to be quite critical when you sewed your shoulder tabs. You needed to make sure that it makes a smooth and continuous line. The pressing and clipping has made a huge difference. That all lies flat now. Next, we're going to sew up the side seams. The back and the front are quite similar, so you might need to just ease them in. I've marked them so that I don't lose which is the back and which is the front, and then when I attach them to the top I will be able to know which the back piece goes on the back bodice. Once the seams are pressed open, it's time to put the top right sides together inside the skirt. So you're going to match the side seams and the centre seams, and make sure that you've got the back of the top with the back of the skirt and vice versa. To create the casing for the waist and to put a piece of elastic in, your first seam line is to attach the top to the skirt, and that's 1 centimetre. And then 2.5 centimetres from the raw edge, you're going to sew another line all the way around. On your first pass, you need to leave a gap of 3 centimetres at the side back. I wouldn't leave it over the seam allowance at the side because you end up with a sort of chunky lump. It's best to do it at the side back by the seam allowance, because then you can easily sew that back up and keep the gathers. So the first pass round is 1 centimetres with a 3 centimetre gap, and the second pass round is 2.5 centimetres from the raw edge, and that will leave a space here for the elastic. I've attached the top to the skirt, and now I want to get this 2.5 centimetre seam allowance, so I'm going to use a seam gauge, which is a magnet that attaches to your foot plate. So I've measured my 2.5, and I'm using the seam guide so that the edge of my fabric runs along the edge of that metal plate, and that will help me to get a 2.5 seam allowance. You need some 7mm elastic to put through the casing. I'm not going to split this pack. I've got a black piece left over from another pack, which is just the right length, perfect for using it up. And you use a safety pin to put through the elastic and run it through the casing. Ensure your elastic isn't twisted, so you should be able to feel it all the way around, and then sew the end of your elastic, either hand stitch or do a square shape on the end. Once you've secured the elastic, you can then distribute it around the waistband. So I've got quite a flat piece there. And then where the opening is, we can sew there, continuing that 1 centimetre seam allowance. To complete the hem, whether you're doing the high-low hem or the straight hem like I'm doing, a hot hemmer is perfect because viscose presses really well, and the hot hemmer allows you to measure and press at the same time. The hem allowance for the straight skirt is 3 centimetres, so you can press up by 1.5 and then press it up again by 1.5. If you're doing the asymmetric hem, then that needs to be pressed up by 1.5 and then you turn down that 1.5 and you would get a much narrower hem, which will help you get round the curves. So keep going round to press up your 1.5 centimetre hem, and then we will turn again. Once you've pressed up your first part of your hem, 1.5, you can then go and press again by using the edge of the skirt, the raw edge, or you can pin first using that raw edge and then go and press it, or you can, if you think you can sew it, okay, you don't need to press it again. You've got two choices here. You can either hand stitch the hem, which if you've got a really delicate fabric would work very well, or you can top stitch the hem if you've got a casual summer dress. Hem's finished, dress is finished. I'm going to use a Kylie and the Machine label. These are the ones that say this is the back, because it's quite tricky to see the front and the back of this top because it's very similar. I think I'm going to use one of these thin ones that says this is the back, and I'm going to sew that onto the back facing. Here's my dress finished. It's got that deep V at the back, similar to the front shape. I did take a little bit out of the shoulder straps because it was a little bit low on the bra band for me, but I made sure that I'd got a really nice pattern balance on the front and also through the waist. It's not a perfect pattern match, there's a bit of B missing there, but it's enough to keep that diamond shape running down the centre. If you would like to make the poppy or the Cara dress, then the pattern is by Atelier Jupe. There are two versions. There's this sleeveless V-shape version and another one with a sort of grown on sleeve, but easier to make actually. Here, and that's got a little bar across the back. You could also try a high-low hem, an asymmetrical hem, or I just kept a straight hem on this one. All the products that I've used are listed below on the Minerva website, so do take a look. This is the new Minerva Exclusive Viscose Challis, which has a huge range out now, so go and check out the new prints. If you don't have an account with us, open an account and you can use that account to share makes, share photographs, get lots of inspiration and tips from fellow sewers in the community. If the poppy isn't on your sewing list right now, you can also put it into your favourites and save it for another time. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.